So, hello everyone. Morning, good evening, wherever you are, whatever part of the world. Welcome to my show once again. This is Manage Better, your show for getting better. Just a quick introduction to today's show, and then we'll quickly jump into it because I have three guests for you today. Not one, two, but really three guests for you today. So, we all struggle with achieving our goals, right? You, your friends, colleagues at work, all of us, we all struggle with achieving our goals. And it's not always about not achieving our goals because of capability or resources. It can be more things as well, right? And some companies always seem to be achieving what they set out to be, or they come really close. Google is one such company. There are many such companies that will come to mind where over the years they've kind of set the benchmark for peak performance. How do they do it? What is their secret sauce? Of course, there is much more than one secret sauce. There could be many more. But we looked at, or while researching for the show, I looked at several things and found that they definitely had a way of achieving their goals in a very systematic manner, and quite unlike many other, I would say, companies. And around 2018, those of you who are familiar or reading books quite a bit will remember this book, Measure What Matters by John Doerr. We will talk about this book a little bit during the show because this is very, very foundational for this episode. So the whole show is around, today's episode is around OKRs, and as some of you may already know, OKRs is short for objectives and key results. And the OKRs whole concept itself is not new. From the time that we've been managing, and in an earlier avatar, there were MBOs, management by objectives. So there is an improvement over it. There is now software around it. But why is it catching fire right now? Everybody is around it. There are, of course, software companies jumping into it, building products. There are consulting companies. There are coaches who are coming into it. So I thought this is a fantastic topic for our show, and that's why we are here. So once again, my name is Anshuman Tiwari, and this show is Manage Better. This goes live on YouTube and LinkedIn, and this time for today it is also live on Twitter. So those of you who are on these channels, please have a look. If you are a YouTube fan or something, you can subscribe so that you can get alerts as well, and also see past content. And all the show in audio and podcast version, which is the on Spotify and Apple Podcasts and other shows. All of this is available on my website, managebetter.in. Right. With that, it is probably time to invite my first guest, and I'll introduce him a little bit and then bring him into the stream. So Vaidyanathan Ramalingam, Vaidya for all of us, is CEO of OKR Stars, a leading OKR product and services company. He's been in the industry for about 30 years, a little bit more, and been around in R&D, focusing on product development and quality assurance, customer service, and the likes, right? So pretty much well-rounded. He's been with leading companies like Motorola, Nortel, Siemens, NES, Intel, HP, Huawei, and quite a few, and now has his own setup and manages the firm OKR. More about him on LinkedIn, of course, and okrstars.com. And I have the now pleasure of inviting Vaidya into the call. Vaidya, hi. Welcome to the show. And any opening comments from you before we get the other guests in?
Thanks for the introduction, Anshuman. I look forward for the agenda. I think we have managed better to connect with our OKR, and I think I look forward for more discussion. Thank you.
Good. Thanks, man. So my next guest today is Seenam Lula. Seenam is a business coach and peak performance strategist at OKR Edge, and she's been her story is pretty interesting because she's been in hospitality for a long time and then a business coach, and now helping leading companies, startups, IT services, manufacturing, and you name it, basically all companies which are interested in OKR to kind of implement OKRs, right? So I'll bring in Seenam into the stream. Hi, Seenam. And any opening comments from you, Seenam, as we get into the show?
Sure. Thanks for having me, first of all. And, as you mentioned, OKRs originally caught on because it was, hey, that's what made Google Google. But it's been interesting in the last year since, we've been in the post-COVID world that it actually relates now to what you call your show, which is Manage Better. Companies are looking at it as a solution to aligning, 50% of knowledge workers now work remotely. So aligning them and still responding to the rapid changes we're experiencing. So love the correlation.
Sure. Thanks, Seenam. Welcome to the show again. And my last but not the least guest on the show is Senthil Rajagopalan. So Senthil is president and CEO at Profit.co, a leading OKR product and services firm. And he's very passionate about customer enhancement and enchantment and employee engagement. And he's known for spending a lot of his time, sometimes more than half of his time, with customers. Has over 20 years experience across functions in India and North America. And you can find more about him on Profit.co. So let me bring in Senthil to the call. Welcome, Senthil.
Thanks, Anshuman.
And any opening comments?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks, Anshuman. Pleased to be on the call. We're quite excited. And, I think we are actually seeing the spread of OKRs, from their original home of Silicon Valley to, multiple verticals, particularly in the last 12 months, right? We are even seeing unusual verticals like governments, state governments and central governments adopting across the world. So the word has spread and people are really looking for more information on just not on what on OKRs, but, how do you really adopt, what are the best practices, how can you really execute that? And I think this show is a great attempt to, spread the word regarding OKRs.
No, thanks, Senthil, and welcome once again, all of you. And as we get into the show, I think more or less, I just thought I'll spend a little time on why three guests and what is the logic behind. So no great logic except that I found the work of these three people extremely interesting and thought instead of one, let us discuss this together. So that is one. Of course, I've requested Vedya to focus a little bit on the why of OKR. So why do we need it, kind of thing, and the what comes from Seenam, she's a coach and consultant on the topic, and Senthil, of course, manages a lot of or helps a lot of clients implement the how part, right? So all three are experts in the field, but we will go more or less in that fashion. So at some point during the call, at about half an hour or so, I will open the chat for questions. You can post in. If you are on LinkedIn Live, you don't need to wait for it, and go ahead and let our guests know. Their teams are already on the LinkedIn, and they can check your comments and respond. Anything that want to know more about their firm services or something, teams will be available to respond to your comments. So go ahead, let your comments pour in, and I will from time to time bring in your comments into the show as well. So starting with getting into the question bit, why? So this is to Vedya, and of course others can chip in. But why do we need OKRs at all? Why can't we do an Excel, or why can't we just run like we run today? Why do we need OKRs?
Okay, thanks, Anshuman. I would relate this question to two more aspects. One is how it connects today for us to manage better. Second one, how it differs from the traditional performance management model. So since 1968, this OKR was introduced at Intel by Andy Grove. And then John Doerr pitched in 1974. Then he published a book called Measure What Matters in 2017. Since then, right after the implementation at Google, most of the tech sector companies in Silicon Valley started following the OKR. So why OKR? So connecting to manage better and the traditional model. So in traditional model, we focus on what part, but in OKR, we follow what and how part. So better manage goals. So that's the first point. Second point is timeline. So in traditional, we do pretty much in annual appraisal or quarterly, half yearly, and so on. So this is nothing to do with exact timeline, but the timeline in OKR is typically quarterly. So we can do check-ins, quarterly course correction, clone the OKRs from prior quarter to the subsequent quarter. So timeline is more rigorously followed in quarterly basis, not from only timeline, but better manage timeline in terms of course correction, cloning, and revisiting, and so on. Third one is visibility. Traditional model, it is between the manager and employee. It is siloed and private. It's like a chess game played by two people. Whereas in OKR, it is like a cricket or kabaddi or baseball. All can watch. It is live. Everyone knows what is going on. So you have collective ownership. So thereby OKR brings in the better visibility to better manage. Fourth is alignment. The alignment in traditional method is typically top to bottom, whereas in OKR, alignment is horizontal, I would say 360-degree, not only top to bottom, not only bottom up, but also horizontal and cross line. Fifth point is linking to compensation benefits. So in traditional method, it is like it promotes the individual results and the individual contribution. Whereas in OKR, true OKR per se, it doesn't. It is loosely coupled. It is not necessarily that you need to link with compensation, so that better manage your compensation separately, but not necessarily it is directly proportionate to your OKRs. Last point, but not the least, the goal type in OKR and the traditional MBO method, management by objective, is goal type is not that much risk averse. But in OKR, it always promotes aspirational, aggressive, audacious, and so on. So all these 6 points we see, it is not that we didn't know how to do performance management, but it's all about what is best thing to do. That's how the book says. That's how globally all of us are following.
Oh, I think fantastic opening, Vedya. Thanks much. So, Seenam, bringing you into the mix, and let me make sure that your company name is correctly presented against your name. Vedya gave a very, very succinct, I would say, opening to why do we need this at all, right? And so can you take a couple of minutes maybe to summarize as to make it real? How does it work in real life? Because you work with clients and consultants, all of you work, but I thought you could give us a little bit of a summary of make it real. How does it work? A summary of that.
Sure. So yes, Vedya pointed out all the superpowers of OKRs. So, but the crux of it is, as we said, the acronym is objectives and key results, right? So the first question people typically ask is, well, why do I have to break a goal into O and KR? I'm used to writing it as a single sentence in KPIs or MBOs. So the O is basically the fundamental question: which direction are we headed in? And the key results basically measure the success of how far along are we in that direction. And just because Google does it or because John Doerr wrote a book about it is not a reason to break your goal into OKRs. It's essentially the tool that helps you execute on your organizational strategy. And a strategy cannot just have one success metric. So your strategy is the O, and there are multiple metrics that will basically flesh out as key results to tell you whether that strategy is working or not. So simple example, if you're somebody who's going to say, grow revenue by $1 million, the grow revenue part is the objective, while $1 million is the key result. But if we were being honest with ourselves and we asked the question, we can't just throw grow revenue by $1 million as a goal. Because in order to grow revenue, you're going to need to build product features. You're going to need to build, pipeline. You're going to need to have some marketing metrics, whether it is brand awareness or performance marketing. All of those become the key results, and growing the revenue is your strategy or the objective. So that's kind of, the essence of it. And the idea that you manage it on 90-day cycle, which, Vedya said is one of the critical pieces, besides being, stretch goal, transparent, collaborative, top-down, bottom-up, all of those things is the hyper focus that it brings in the 90-day cycle. But more importantly, as human beings, we respond better or are motivated more when we see frequent wins and we have the opportunity to calibrate 4 times over a year rather than wait for an entire year and look back in the rear view and say, hey, did that happen? Did that not happen? And how does it correlate to what I do in the organization, right? What's my sense of purpose? So the biggest value that it brings in this 90-day cycle is that the quick wins really, really motivate teams with a sense of purpose and give them the opportunity to pivot if required.
Yeah. So I think, thanks, Sinam, for making it real for us. So obviously, moving on from a concept, as Vedya explained, and you kind of fleshed it out a little bit. So let's move to Senthil. Senthil, I'll bring you in. And, my question to you is more around and you run, of course, like Vedya also does, you run a company that provides software and related services as well. So why do we need a software for this? This is simple, right? So I have an objective at work, my boss gives me a set of objectives, I note it down, we meet at the end of 6 months or sometimes a year. If I get it, fine. If I'm close, a little okay. If I'm not close, not too bad. So this everybody does, and there are some comments in the show timeline as well that this has been around, right? So while Vedya and Sinam kind of fleshed it out a little bit, I wanted you to bring the need for a software perspective. How does it work? And any generic software. So why not Excel, right? So everybody loves Excel.
Sure. I think, Anshuman, in fact, you touched upon a great point, and I wanted to really answer that by giving a real-world experience, right, which we experienced with a customer of ours. And in fact, quite a good chunk of our customers actually are people who have decided to implement OKRs and have spent a quarter or two trying to do that with spreadsheets, right? So this was a customer who was actually outside the Silicon Valley, but still in the US. And the CMO, right, the Chief Marketing Officer, wanted actually the company to, at least her department, to transform, because she identified a lot of nimble-footed startups from Silicon Valley, and she wanted her team to implement OKRs and really execute like Silicon Valley. So that was a brief. She had read the book. She had actually brought in her reports, excited them about the concept of OKRs, got their buy-in, and then said, let's go out and implement OKRs, right? Let's just use spreadsheets for this first quarter, and let's try out and let's try to emulate Silicon Valley. So what happened? The department leaders took the message, they briefed their teams about OKRs, gave them general guidance, right? And the managers and individual contributors attempted to define the OKRs in an Excel sheet, right? Problem one, right? The template was very difficult to enter for users, and a lot of errors cropped up, right? People started maintaining multiple versions, and they started sharing the spreadsheets by emails, right? Some people complained that, hey, my OKRs have been overwritten by others, and there's a very difficult way to track, right? So, and also, tracking alignment, right? Alignment is one of the superpowers of OKRs. That became a big problem, right? So one of their objectives was to create a great digital marketing team, right? So which means there was contribution to be done by the marketing team itself, contribution to be done by the recruitment team, by the talent development team, by all of them. But each of them were actually having their own Excel sheets, and they were not really, the objectives and key results were not really aligned, right? So this, and slowly people started, complaining. Managers and contributors started complaining that, oh, this whole exercise is quite laborious, sucking up a lot of my time, not allowing me to do the real work, right? But in particular, people really dreaded the meetings they had with the CMO, right? Because they had to prepare really several weeks ahead. They had to collect data from multiple Excel sheets, clean up the data, create reports. And then, by the time they went and presented, the reports became outdated. And the CMO's experience, it was not great either, right? She had to wait for the review meetings to get a sense of what is the progress of various teams, right? She really didn't have any scoreboard which she can go. She didn't have, reports and dashboard. Nothing was there. So if you really look at 3 classes of users, right, in an OKR implementation, right, which would be the executives who want, a transformation to happen. You want the managers, who are the people who are actually providing the second level of leadership and making things happen. And then the individual contributors who will have to enter the data on a weekly basis and do the check-ins on a weekly basis, and and see, and more importantly, see the alignment, right? See the scoreboard, That's one of the most important benefit of OKRs, right? And so far, sales teams actually have a scoreboard, and they are available, and they're quite aware of how the entire team is performing, right? Most of the other teams don't have this, complete scoreboard, right? OKRs, having a good OKR software gives you the complete scoreboard. So obviously they came to us, and we worked with them, implemented, software, and within a quarter, right? Obviously, most of these problems vanished, and the OKR effort, which was threatened to be, derailed, right? Because people thought the problem with the spreadsheets was actually the problem with the OKRs, right? So there was a lot of bad rap OKRs were getting, and that was actually solved. And obviously, the CMO is quite a happy lady now.
Yeah, I think good points, Senthil. So, I was provoking you a little bit by bringing Excel in, but I think thanks for not falling for the provocation. But what you mentioned also, so for the audience, I do want to once again remind, this is the book, this is the Bible for OKRs. Everybody refers to this. This is one of those topics that probably no other book might get written on this, because this has everything. So, coming back to your response, Senthil, I think very well said. I would like to summarize also this section where you all brought in your thoughts. Is, of course, we need OKRs because we need to achieve our goals. So the traditional methods that we've been using for 25, 30 years were not getting most of our companies to the goals that we wanted to. So obviously, some companies were getting there, including Google, like all of you said, and several other companies where John Doerr supported. So that brings us to the what part, and you also explained very succinctly as to how software can actually help. And we are neither here proposing a software, not propagating. People who want to use Excel can use it for 1 or 2 quarters, learn the concept, and then when they overgrow that, more than happy to try out something. This thing. So Jagdish has asked for the name of the book. Jagdish, this is John Doerr's Measure What Matters. Very, very popular book. All 3 speakers mentioned. So that is. That's a good segue into my next section, which is around experiences. And Senthil, you already shared a little bit of an experience of a client who was trying to do this, and you merged your answer around the software with this. Let me go to Vedya and see if he has any example from his experience or his client base, and he can share something with us on how some company used OKRs to achieve what they wanted to achieve, and what was their lesson learned.
Okay, so I would answer like this. So we have segments of customers, and then geographically also. So segment meaning you don't have anything to do now, but you want to do directly go to OKR. Okay. Or you have something in Excel sheet in OKR, but you want automation. Third one is you have the traditional MBO based performance management, which does the smart goal approach, but then you want to upgrade to OKR. Something, the analogy I would say, you don't have telephone, you want iPhone. You don't have telephone, you have a button phone. You have button phone, you want iPhone. You want a phone, economical 5G. Now you can see the variant. This is one of the segment-wise analogy. Second one is geographical based. In US or our outside India, so-called customers, they're very clear. They don't want mixie, grinder in one. They want either mixie or grinder. India, mixie, grinder, washing machine, refrigerator, all in one. Single sign-on, single database, single authentication, all in one. Anyway, we don't want to debate about it. It will go long time. So coming to my point, so customers in India, to be very specific response to your question, Ansuman, they are little not clear about OKR still. So we thank CNM kind of coaches, because it's not a buying treadmill, you need to have coach to reduce the weight. Treadmill, you can put for some for other purposes. Without coach, orientation, the transformation, culture shift cannot happen. So we first educate the customer in India. Some of the experience, 2-3 experiences in Indian customers is basically they will ask, the score not to be disclosed. First of all, OKR is 100% transparent. There is nothing like secret, like the cricket match I was talking about. It is not a chess game. So this is one kind of issue. Second one is this mixie grinder example I told. They want all in one. You cannot have compensation. You cannot have. Luckily, they didn't tell matrimonial site to also be linked like so far. Otherwise, they will link matrimonial site because they want a single. They don't mind installing 50 apps on their mobile. They don't mind. When it comes to HRIS, when it comes to OKR, they want all in one. So my conclusion is, please be specific. Think, are you in a button phone or Alexander Graham Bell, their old phone, or an iPhone, or a smartphone? What is your destiny? Who is your coach? Are you having clarity on your roadmap? First, think about it. Consult coach or talk to us. We will guide you. So then take it. Don't jump into directly, conclusion that I will go and buy this tool or I will use this particular template. I can go. So that's what I would generally say. The target customer are the geographically where US clients are very clear. They want only OKR. Maybe project and task they want to add, but they want only objective to be tracked, key result to be tracked, aligned, visibility, and that's all they need. They don't want anything else. So this is how I would share my experience from my customers.
No, fantastic. I like the mixie and grinder one. So we will do another show where they are on only mixie and grinder, and maybe with a different audience. But that kind of lays the ground quite well. So and it also reminded me of a quote I often use. It is attributed to Bill Gates. That we overestimate what we can achieve in a year and underestimate what we can do in a decade. So that same thing applies to OKR as well, that, every company, if you want to change what you haven't been for 25 years in 1 quarter, 1 year, that's not going to happen. But if you give it 2-3 years, a lot can happen. So that's broadly it. Seenam, bringing you into the stream now. So any examples from your set of clients? Interesting examples. Mixie grinder might be too much to of an act to follow, but something from your experience where you feel that that could help the audience understand what is all this, and then we move on to the next set of questions.
Sure. That is a tough act to follow, Vedya. I don't know if I can match that. But, over the last 2 years, I would say I've done about 24, 25 OKR coaching implementations. And it's been phenomenal. Some of those companies are on their way to becoming unicorns in India. But given the nature of my work, I cannot mention a lot of the companies. But a particular client that I can talk about and would love to talk about is this company called Tavan. You probably would be familiar because you're in a similar line of work. They're 900 employees strong, headquartered in Santa Clara with offices in India in different cities and in a very competitive industry, which is, product development that is outsourced. And I coached them for about a year and it has been phenomenal. And phenomenal, why? Because my benchmark for success is how well is a company managing its OKR program after I stop coaching? Does it self-sustain or does it fizzle down, because it was a shiny penny syndrome? And for them, it's been now over 1.5 years. And, the discipline that they've had, the approach that they've had, which is more enablement, not enforcement, which is kind of sometimes, things that companies in India default to. And they've not done that. And also, having a core OKR management team that has made the program bigger and better. And, I don't know if you guys have ever watched the show, but there is this New York news channel that always says at 10 o'clock, do you know where your children are? And so I kind of do that check with my clients, from time to time, even if I'm not with them. And when I just checked with them actually last week, they said they are hitting all their business and cultural transformation goals with OKRs successfully. So that to me is success.
No, very, very well said. And this is fantastic that you can check with your clients, or you do check with your clients after maybe the assignment is quote unquote over, right? So I mean, all consultants know that the assignment is never over because things change and life moves. So yeah, so thanks for this. And I'm noticing a lot of questions, guys, in the chat window. So let them keep coming. I will, of course, bring in the questions a little later into the show. So there are a couple of more questions that we will pose to our guests, but keep them coming. We will bring, so Sunil Kumar, you have a few questions. Jagdish, your question hopefully has been answered. Dhruv, I'll bring in your question. Subhamita, I hope I got your name right. And Vivek, we'll certainly get to your questions. Don't worry. This is the best panel that we can get in India and maybe around the world on this topic. So you will definitely get your questions answered. And good thing you asked on LinkedIn. So even if it doesn't get answered in this show, it will be on the show chat and we can answer that later. So moving on, in a way, so I wanted to kind of get to the how do we do this, right? We've now invested a little, about half an hour, 25 minutes into what is this and how does it really look like. And I will invite all participants to check YouTube and the website that I shared about the speakers. So the demos of all these products are already there. So it's so we'll not go there because that in this kind of a show to get a demo is very complicated. But I wanted to bring Senthil in once again. And Senthil, the question to you is a little bit of a what could be the key steps if some of our audience or companies want to implement this. So what would be your recommendation on key steps for implementing OKRs?
Yeah. So Anshuman, the first step would be, right, for the executive team or the leadership team to take a step back, right, and really look at what do they intend to achieve by implementing OKRs. Right? OKRs is a means towards an end. Right? There are hundreds of management theories and frameworks out there, right? And why are OKRs so hard today and practiced by the top companies, right, of today's era? Right, like what Steve Jobs used to say about Apple products, right? It's just because they simply work, right? They work, and they seem to work with the leaders. So, but first, in your context, try to understand, right, what are the problems that you're trying to solve with OKRs, right? And I ask these questions to our customers, and some of the answers I get are that we really want to bridge the strategy execution gap, right? Bulk of our company at the second, third level seem to be not aware of the strategy, right? We do have a balanced scorecard, but we don't know how to implement that, right? Or the other popular answers are, we want to build a high-performance team, right? And we want OKRs to be the way to do it. Or we want to improve execution. We want to build in a culture of accountability. And of course, we want to take stretch goals and take moonshots. And we really want to move away from business as usual, right? So these are some of the problems that OKRs can solve, right? So once the executive team, right, leadership team, right, they need to develop the conviction, right? This is something which we absolutely need to implement, and this will have to be looked upon almost like a business transformation type of an exercise, because OKRs is not just about goals and planning, but it's really an execution framework, right? How to translate your strategy to reality. So the steps I would say are, first, the executive team gets the conviction, right? And then you really have to create a sense of urgency, right, among the next level, right? Because starting off another management program, there could be some skepticism among people. So it's very, very important to say that it is not business as usual. You build a consensus at the second level, and then the leadership team should choose, right? Because focus is so important, right? What do you want to really achieve in the next 12 months? What do you want to really achieve in the next 3 months? And then follow, clearly define them, right? Absolutely, they can take the help of coaches, and then they really define what would be their objectives and key results at the corporate level or at the business unit level, whichever way they're implementing, and then invite the second level of leadership, right, to define their own objectives and key results and align them in a bottom-up way, right? So that actually builds up a lot of employee engagement and builds up employee empowerment, and that sets a real tone, right, to do this. But after that, right, planning is a part which most people get it, and it's really talked about. But in my view, really execution is the key, right? So out of the 13 weeks in a quarter, you're going to be spending 1 week in planning and 12 weeks in execution. And during that execution, what really keeps this moving is nothing but executive will and ensuring there's a culture of check-ins and reviews, right, happening on a week-on-week basis, right? On week-on-week basis, you do check-ins, right, using a good software, where you will also write the comments about what is your confidence level of achieving a particular key result by the end of the quarter, right? And then you absolutely, go on it relentlessly and use the review meetings, right, to really talk about the interdependencies that exist between different departments and what is working, what is not working. Most importantly, talk about the problems that we're having, and also ensure that you really allocate a one day in a month, right, to ensure that you have a brown bag learning session, celebrate successes, and keep on moving till the 13th week, right? And during the 13th week, have a reflect, reset session, right, where you really review key result after key result and see what has been achieved, what has not been achieved, and then definitely celebrate successes and absolutely learn from failures, and have a culture, promote a culture. There's a strong cultural element to this, right? Promote a culture which really rewards experimentation and tolerates failures and encourages people to learn from those mistakes. And if you really have a good team, and if you've had the buy-in from the team, and if you have a good software to go along with it, all of this should be baked into the process. And the first quarter becomes a learning experience, right, where you have really learned how this whole thing works. And people really learn that, okay, it's good to have aspirational goals, it's good to have stretch goals, and make only 60% of it, 70% of it, so that people are not worried about really taking stretch targets, right? So to that extent, first 2 quarters, I would even encourage people to de-link OKRs from performance management, right? People don't have to worry about how this really, is going to impact my bonus and so on and so forth, right? So you have this approach, go through 1 quarter, learning quarter, next quarter you will get better. Probably by the 4th quarter, right, you will be, doing very, very well, and you'll be achieving things much more than what you believed was possible. So that would be the approach.
Yeah, I think so. So Senthil, I mean, pretty relatable, and it's I will urge my audience to try and understand this way, that this is no different from any sound management method implementation, right? So that is what you do, and parallel to running or any other sport that you may want. If you want to run a marathon, you don't run a marathon in your first attempt, right? You take some time, you learn the ropes, you make your body tuned in for that, you prepare for it, and maybe in 2 to 3 quarters you will get there. Most people who enroll for a marathon program want to run the marathon in the first run, which only leads to injury and only helps the orthopedic doctor get some more clients. So unless you are in that category, take this advice. Were there anything to add to what Senthil said in terms of implementation advice based on your clients?
Yeah, I agree with Senthil. It is more of, yes, the clarity at top level. And then second point is -1, -2 from CEO is the focus to start with. Keep away the performance management and probably the compensation part. Third point is, once you inspire the team, clarity at that execution level, top level, CXO level, -1, -2, then bring department or team level, project level, and individual contributor. Then slowly induct them also in this process of transformation journey, along with coach and the clarity and the intent and execution. I think it will go success. But I like the word told by Senthil. Execution is a key. Even John Doerr, execution is the key. You can buy anything. You can install any software. You can buy Tally. Your accounting cannot go perfect. Tally is a tool. Accounting has to be there in the integrity, accounting. There are so many processes. So my thought here is that I agree with Senthil. I think we should start with CEO -1, -2. Subsequently, then induct the next level of people, and then don't rely on tool. The tool will do magic. Of course, tool vendors like us, we will anyway do better job. But then your coach, your own internal people, and the sponsoring body should have clarity. So then I think your attempt will be success. Otherwise, you may have some hindrances, but you will be able to do it.
Fair enough. Thanks, Vedha. Seenam, moving into the last section of the show, and I already have enough and more questions, but I will still urge people to, especially those on LinkedIn, to leave their questions on the LinkedIn chat. Even if we can't answer, we will come back to you during after the show as well. So Sinam, last question pretty much, and then we get into the live Q&A. The question for you more is, like everything else, this can't be perfect, right? So obviously some places it goes wrong, and we can learn from where others have gone wrong. So since you consult with companies and, as a coach, you might have seen much more things going wrong as well. So what are the key lessons that we can draw from what others have, where others have tripped, and maybe the audience can avoid those pitfalls?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, first of all, at the peril of losing business for all three of us here, I'm going to take a step backward and say OKRs are not for everyone. So just because you picked up this book at the airport and you took a long flight and you read the book and you land, don't come to your chief of strategy and say, hey, let's just go ahead and do OKRs. Don't fix what's not broken. If you have an organization that already has a strong culture of high performance and things are working, don't look to OKRs just because it's a new thing. So that's one. And if you do evaluate that OKRs is something that you need, as Senthil correctly said, almost always the answer is there's a gap of translation of strategy from the top level down to the frontline leads. If you do identify that as a gap, or alignment as the gap, or the need for focus on goals on a quarterly basis, whatever your reasoning may be, take the time, and that's especially what I do with organizations, is to tailor the program for your organization. The example I always give is, there's hundreds of great recipes of dum biryani. One is not better than the other. So every recipe is good, and it is for the liking of the people who are consuming it. So again, we have two, incredibly good tools over here. But and I've had the pleasure of using both the tools. Both tools are great, but they probably serve different audiences. So evaluate what you want from your OKR programs, have OKR for OKRs, and then tailor the program to your organizational needs, and then have the patience to execute on that for a year. Because again, like everybody else here has said, it is not a magic wand that's going to turn Cinderella from a housekeeper to a princess. It takes its own time, and there is skepticism involved in different people that needs to be tackled. So the buy-in, the change management, the cultural transformation, all of that is painstaking. The communication for it has to be robust. So you give yourself 3 quarters to really start hitting the high notes. And the one last thing that I do want to emphasize, which also both Senthil and Vedya mentioned, is that I notice a tendency to draw a straight line link between OKRs and individual compensation evaluation. There couldn't be a worse plan than that, for the simple reason that if you want people to stretch for the moon so that we can at least land among the stars, and then you tell them, hey, buddy, I am going to compensate you on the basis of this, tell me which employee in the world will not sandbag their goals. So that correlation is the worst thing ever to do. As Senthil correctly said, de-link them for some period of time. Let people learn OKRs, and don't put the horse before the cart. Let them learn first, identify the right tool that works for you, get into the execution mode, and then address what is a holistic individual performance evaluation piece that works for your organization in alignment with what your OKR approach is.
No, fantastic. I think well summarized. These are pitfalls. Certainly, most people who will start this will face. So we will now get into the question set, and I will try and pick up some questions. So Mangesh on LinkedIn wants to know, how can we integrate strategy deployment through deployment process? And he's referring to X metrics, which all of us must be familiar with, or the Hoshin-Kanri method with OKR. So could you share best practices around it? Any one of you and with experience on X metrics or Hoshin-Kanri used for strategy deployment? It is quite well integrated with the OKRs, but I thought let me open the question. Vedya, you want to take it up if you want?
I think I passed the question.
Sure. Hey, Senthil or Sinam, you want to take a shot? Yeah.
Sure. Let me take a shot at it. And in fact, quite a few customers, right, really look at OKRs because they see a gap in terms of translating their strategy into execution. Right. So I think what we would suggest, and in fact, Hoshin Kandri, we have written about this. Hoshin Kandri has a very close relationship to OKRs, right? So, what we would suggest is that, look at your strategy, right? Look at, if you have a balanced scorecard type of a framework, right? Critically look at your strategy, look at the initiatives, in fact, and prioritize on the initiatives. And those, in fact, initiatives actually get translated to objectives, right? And once you prioritize at a company level, what would be the top 3 to 5 initiatives, from your strategy, right, which you would like to translate, right, into objectives? Then the clarity comes, right? So you decide, because strategy, the difference between strategy and OKRs is that strategy has a minimum 3 to 5 year type of a time frame, right? Whereas OKRs has a quarterly time frame to really realize your strategy, right? So that's the reason why you really have to prioritize, break, have intermediate targets, and then you translate the initiatives into objectives, right? And then break down the objectives, obviously, with key results on a quarterly basis. And objectives can be annual or quarterly, right? And once you are able to do this prioritization exercise, then start evaluating things, obviously, with weekly check-ins and quarterly reflect reset, right? That is one way which we see customers translating strategy to OKRs.
Yeah, fair enough. So Sunil on YouTube has several questions. One of the questions is for second level executives, and this goes back to, I think, Sinam, you were mentioning -1, -2. For second level executives, what would be the base for them to write OKRs? So I think, if you get the question, would you like to take a shot? Yeah.
Sure. I love this question because, again, everybody, especially organizations that have an MBO mindset, usually they come from the thinking that, it is OKRs cascade. And the number one myth is, no, they should not cascade. As Senthil had previously said in the program, the first step is, once you have decided to move forward with OKRs, you end up writing what are called as organizational or company OKRs, and that is usually done by the leadership. That OKRs then get shared with the next level, and the expectation is not that those OKRs then become the OKRs or get cascaded, the KRs become cascaded as objectives for the next level, but it is for the next level to write their own OKRs in alignment with the organizational OKRs. So there's a big difference, not cascaded, aligned. You are still working on the highest priorities that the organization needs you to deliver, but you are also ensuring that you are capturing at the team level what else you are doing in the next 90 days that can translate to measurable objectives and key results. So super, super important. And what is more importantly, thinking about what is the ideology behind it. The reason OKRs have succeeded in organizations where they've been implemented correctly is that OKRs are not looking to create doers. The purpose of OKRs is to create thinkers at each level. We're not looking to prescribe the how to people, but the idea is that you have everybody understands the why, and then everybody has a granular why for themselves and for their team, and then the what is success is measured as key results.
Yeah, well said. Sridhar, one of my regular participants, has a few questions, but let's pick one. Do we need to have objectives change every quarter? So yes, this could be something that all of us may want to wonder. All of you mentioned 90-day cycles, right? So does this mean that we are changing our objectives every 90 days? That would be quite chaotic. Anyone wants to take that?
So I would like to take this. Actually,
Sure.
the answer is it depends, because as we have discussed, the 3 to 5 years long-term strategy will be derived as annual goals, annual OKRs by CEO. Further, quarterly priorities are derived from annual goals. Thereby, we have Q1, Q2, and so on. Within Q1, then we have the executive level focus, then mid-level and lowest level. So objective, if the objective is of well-sliced objective, well-sliced meaning you have kind of made a scope that could fall into a quarter, then your objective will remain in the quarter itself. But most of the time, if the objective is in the nature of throughout the year or even more than a year, for example, increasing sales, your objective will never change. Till the time your company is there, your objective will have that one term called increase sales. But then increase sales is a broader, bold statement. When it comes to key result, how you verify this bold statement? $10 million I would like to reach in Q1. So that may change. The number will change. The objective is a bold statement which is probably same or it may differ. So the number is the one we always, number in the sense, the quantitative aspect or verifiable key results. You can call KI, the key result or KPI, whether it's a percentage based and so on. It is a upward trend or downward trend or status quo. So that may change. So the answer is, it depends.
Fair enough. Sridhar, hope you had your answer. There is one interesting question that is, that's a recurring theme actually. Amitabh wants to know what are some training programs. So Amitabh, there are quite a lot of programs available, and as always on every topic, there are some free programs also available, which will give you some good overview on the websites of all the three speakers. You can check YouTube for basic introductory video as well. I hope this show itself will become one introductory video available on for most people. But Sinam has a masterclass on Udemy, I believe, right, Sinam? So you can, if you can check that as well. It's a very popular show. That's how I got to know Sinam as well. So there are quite a few courses, and I can. Sure.
Can I just add to that? Sorry. So the only thing I want to add to that is, just like you go and Google anything in the world, when you Google OKRs, you're going to see thousands of results. Don't allow that to again overwhelm you or baffle you. Ask yourself again, what is your expectation from the OKR training program? Are you a chief of strategy? Are you in HR? Are you a tech product manager? What is your expectation to learn? And get more specific in what you want from it, and then choose the right training program. There are many available, but then again, not one size fits all. And I'm not advocating mine. Thank you for doing that, though, Anshuman, because mine is, sort of aimed at leadership, but also leadership of a certain type. It is a great course, but see first whether it is a fit for you or not.
Sure, and always I'm a big proponent of free courses. So then these days, basic information on all topics can be found free. And like Sinam said, then you decide what is your area. And of course, in-depth information on everything, I would always say that you should pay for it and learn properly once you figure out what you need, right? So, but what you need can be found out fairly easily with some pointers. Bakari Abu Bakar, my friend from Africa, has asked a question around what are the first steps. I believe we've answered this, but thanks for the question, man. We have Vivek asking, has any of the panelists cascaded OKRs to the last mile employees? If yes, can you give a real example? So we had some examples coming in, but I think Vivek is looking for an example from a tech company. I believe all of you have worked with tech companies, and so any example to let Vivek know that this is for real. I think that's the hidden question, that is this real?
Absolutely. So can I take a shot at that?
Sure, please.
Yeah. So we do work with tech companies all the time, both product as well as services companies, right? So if I have to give one example, right, one of the IT services companies, right, they really wanted to create and expand their data sciences team, right? They had an analytics team, but they really wanted to expand the data sciences team, right? So that was really at the corporate level, their OKR, right? So now, to expand your data sciences team, right? So you need to do multiple things, right? You need to recruit maybe people from the market, right? Which your HR recruitment team, right? They will take that as their OKR and they will align, right, with their corporate OKR. And then there is an opportunity to retrain some of your existing people, right, who can actually equip themselves and become part of this team, right? So you have the training and development team contributing to this particular OKR, right? And third, there were also some educational institute outreach type of teams, and they went ahead and created collaborative programs, right, with educational institutes so that they can actually take people straight from the institute and start using them, right? So this is, with respect to expanding a team, right, which is a corporate level OKR, that really, cascades down, right, to different teams, right? It could be recruitment, training and development, execution teams, and so on and so forth. And even if it comes to the IT services organization, a lot of people ask a question, right? How do project-based organizations, how can they implement OKRs, right? So even there, we have seen, the OKRs really cascading to the last level, right? So because even if it's a IT services team, right? Obviously, if you want to increase profitability, right, it can be as an OKR, right? It can be broken down into, let's say, for example, the quality team, right? They have a set of KPIs, right? And how do they, overall across the projects at an average, right? How do you want to, what sort of metrics do you want to have with respect to quality, right? So that becomes the key result, and for the last mile actually. And so similarly, for other execution teams, whether it's a project management team or or the coding team, right? You can actually take the corporate OKR and break that down to a level where they actually contribute to that OKR, right? Cascade it one level above, and then they align and they keep contributing, right? So we can, any type of organization, right? If you really apply our mind and get the second level of leadership, you can absolutely take it down to the last mile. And that's in fact one of the biggest benefits of OKRs, because the last person, right, in the chain doesn't have to feel that he or she is a cog in the mission, right? They can see how their work contributes to the corporate goals, right? And they can be very aligned with that.
Yeah, I think so. Senthil, that's extremely important. I hope, Vivek, you had your answer. So it is. It's very much possible, and it is actually quite popular in IT services or tech companies. That's where it grew, right? So obviously, a little better implementation there. Other companies are now picking it up. I work for a large IT services firm as well, and I can clearly see that. So for a moment, if we keep aside the delivery function, there are multiple other functions in every company, which totally need something like this, because they tend to get sometimes lost in the whole jungle, so to say. And even if we don't have it across the delivery teams, there is still a lot more on 50-60% of the companies. Sometimes even higher is actually non-delivery. So these are possible. I have a few questions from Shubhamita. I believe this has been answered, Shubhamita, so I'll move on. Is this for individual perform analysis or organizational? So we have taken this. Thanks for this. Coming towards the pretty much, some of the questions are pretty in the same space. So quite a few have asked about this book, which I believe the link has been shared already. So go ahead if you are interested in the book. And Prabhat has asked questions which also has been answered. But if somebody wants to summarize this, I think this will be a good summary to the session as well. Goals and results have always been there. What is fundamentally different with OKR? So 1 minute summary for this. Anyone?
So from my side, as I said, the performance management is there since 1954 when the MBO was introduced by Peter Drucker. But then all that we are saying is OKR is a so-called the best method that are currently evolving, and it has 6 key differences, as I mentioned in the earlier: alignment, focus, what and how part, transformation, timeline, transparency, adoucious. So these are the fundamental ingredients that makes OKR become more friendly today, or most popular in CXOs. That is what I would put it as a key difference.
Sure. I'm just quickly looking for any major question unanswered, but I think a similar question, and Sheshadri has reminded me twice. Sheshasai, sorry. How's OKR different from a balanced scorecard implementation? So, yeah, interesting one. Anyone wants to take that? Seenam, you want to take that? How is this different from a balanced scorecard implementation?
It's a big subject, but essentially the two approaches are very different. As Senthil had pointed before also, while balanced scorecard at the organization level breaks into 4 quadrants, and then you can measure, business, customer impact, etc., rather easily at that level. The challenge with balanced scorecard is that it does not translate as simply and easily down to the frontline leads the way OKRs do. In the OKR methodology, every single person in the organization is able to have very clear outcomes on a 90-day cycle that they can sort of work towards, understand how it aligns with the overall organizational strategy. Versus what organizations have experienced with balanced scorecard is, yes, leadership understands the 4 quadrants, but how does it translate down to the day-to-day work every single person does? It is a very difficult mechanism, and there has not been an effective tool built like the way these guys have built tools around OKRs that can allow you to create that translation.
Yeah, I think really well said. So like most of us who have worked with balanced scorecards earlier, it is fantastic to see your strategy evolve in 4 quadrants. But as all of us know, the strategy itself is not enough. You still need to get it done. And that is where OKRs really, really come into their own, because, they help us get it done. One last question, and then we will wrap up. Dhruv asks, how long does it take to implement OKR to reach steady state? Depends on what you define steady state, Dhruv. But having known Dhruv, I know him very well. So well-intentioned question. So I think partly we had answered, but if you want to, elaborate the answer, anyone, I would open the question. But generally a year, 1 quarter to start, and it takes about a year. But if any one of you want to amplify the answer, please go ahead.
Sure. Maybe I can take a shot at it. And we have seen different sizes of teams, from 500 size, 500 member, let's say a funded startup, to 100,000 people IT services company, right? So what we have always seen is that the first quarter is the learning quarter, and you really start, like what Vaidya also mentioned before, at the leadership level and maybe 2 levels below, right, for the first quarter, right? And use that learning, build a consensus, and make sure that the discipline of check-in, everything is done. And then, from the second quarter onwards, you've set the tone, right, in terms of how the goals should be defined, right, as objectives, what percentage should be stretch goals versus, committed goals. And, as people have learned from the entire thing in 1 quarter, right, the second quarter, really people start, getting into steady state. And we have seen 2 to 3 quarters, and in large companies, maybe 4 quarters, people absolutely reach the steady state. And software probably contributes to 25 to 30% of it, but the remaining thing is to have the executive will and having a great methodology framework and relentlessly focus on execution. Right? You will reach there.
Yeah, I think I'm reminded what Vaidya also said, that you can get your treadmill, but you could end up using it for other purposes. That's an example that many of us will probably recall after the session as well. And so that pretty much brings us to an end. There are still questions coming in, but all I can say, guys, these are very busy people. I could steal about an hour from them, and they have hopefully given answers to most of your areas. There's specific questions around hotel management. But I would, since it is on LinkedIn, it will be easier for one of you to kind of go on later on and answer. So that pretty much brings the show to an end, team. And what I want to do is quickly, and of course, apart from thanking all my speakers, and also reminding the audience about this whole concept, the purpose of bringing this topic to you is that this is a topic that a lot of people are talking about, and not only talking about, now a lot of people are doing something about it, right? So it is no longer a Silicon Valley subject. It's no longer an IT services company subject. It is a subject that all of us who have goals, and I can't think of anybody who doesn't have goals, right? And in a work scenario, and if you have those goals and you have had difficulty achieving them over a period of time, all of us have had. There is a fantastic method out there in the market, which actually is helping a lot of companies, small and big, small, medium, big, actually all sizes. And if anybody has a doubt as to can it work for big companies? Google used it, right? So there is no bigger company today than Google. So if Google uses it and gets all the results that they do, obviously nobody's saying that Google doesn't miss any goals, but they get more than what they miss, much more than what they miss, right? So that's the reason why I thought I'll bring this topic, and many thanks to my guests Vedya, Sinam, and Senthil for taking time out and sharing their experiences, really, right? So the wisdom is all there in the book that we all refer to, but it is the experience that hopefully came through in the responses. I've shared the website addresses of all the speakers, so you can get more information about them and their services on their websites. The show will be available as a recording on YouTube and LinkedIn Live, and those who are interested on Twitter as well, and as an audio version in about a week's time on popular podcast channels. So those who still drive to work and want to listen to a podcast version or at their desk can listen to the podcast version. So with that, I bring this show to an end, and like always, I announce the next show in the current one. So and team, everybody, there are a lot of thank yous coming in. So I know that you are probably not looking at the comment stream, but a lot of comments coming in. Thank you very much, Dhruv, Jagdish, Bakari, Arun, Amitabh. Thanks a lot for your compliments, and we love bringing this to you. So no problem at all. The next show is on 24th of April, 6 p.m. India time, and with Dr. Oleg Konovalov. Those of you who may want to know, Dr. Oleg Konovalov is the #1 vision-based coach in the world today. He's a member of the Thinkers 50 for several years. He's part of the Marshall Goldsmith 100 coaches. He's a TEDx speaker, and then, like I said, #1 vision-based leadership coach in the world. His most recent book, The Vision Code, is already a bestseller. So look forward to that episode. I will, of course, keep you all informed. Very, very difficult person to get to, but we have him for you. So a month down the line, you will have Dr. Oleg Konovalov with you. With that, once again, thank you to my audience and the speaker. Thank you once again. We will end the chat show now. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.